Hello and welcome. My name is Will MacPherson, urban planner, TEDx speaker, and exciting new podcast host. And you've hit a special edition of Rock Bottom, building your happiness and health into your life from the cement on up. Introducing you to people very interesting, but you probably won't meet them on the street. Today, like I said, is a very special episode. We're going to talk about your overall digestive health powered by a glass of fermented grapes or wine. So today, we've got the history, the lowdown, one of America's greatest national treasures, Napa Valley, California. Listen, this podcast is going to be great for, cocktail party conversation and your general knowledge. Today, you're going to get the topography, regional history of all the great wines produced in Napa and their distinct flavors. We'll also provide my expert guests top 2 picks for Napa wine that are, I'm sure, reasonably priced, but you're not going to find them on the shelves at Alaska. You'll probably find them in Benny's or have them shipped. So my next guest is Scott Bombron. Yes, Scott's an Illinois Institute of Technology degree electrical engineer with over 30 years of employment at Square D. The trivia on Scott is this, right? He grew up in a certain suburb of Chicago that starts with an E and ends with a T. He's a 6'6" skinny kid. We called him the Condor because of his large wingspan. Basketball player back in the day, could dunk. Probably not right now. Maybe. Baby bees. Can you dunk?
No.
Still?
No.
Okay.
That's gone.
Well, according to Scott's lunkhead high school friends, in his youth, he'd imbibe with them for the usual young person, get drunk fast drinks on occasion. Well, listen, we're going to fast forward some years later and things have changed. Well, not a professional sommelier, Scott would be classified as a highly qualified wine aficionado, especially on Napa Valley. So Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
All right. So I'm going to start out with a question that sounds a bit cheesy, right? But maybe you could unpack a little bit about how and why you've woven yourself in the wine tapestry of Napa Valley. I mean, how can a guy, right, who's living a good chunk of the year in Chicago do this? How can he pull it off?
Well, we are fortunate enough to share a home in Napa Valley. My brother lives in San Francisco, and he kind of wanted a getaway place out of town, and what better place than Napa? And so we went in on it with him. So my wife and I already had a huge love of wine. So we try to get out to visit our Napa house about 4 times a year. And whenever we do, we try to go to lots of wine tastings.
Right. I mean, hey, man, you got to make your time there worth it, right? So hit it up and hit it up good. So, what's amazing to me is, I've been to Napa before, right? And I always thought of it as this large chunk of land north of San Francisco, like half the size of the state of California. But it's really a couple miles wide and 30 miles long. That's a little plot, but it's one hell of a plot. So Scott, let's lead off, right? What we're all thinking here. What is considered clean wine, or maybe some of us are afraid of drinking red wine because of the perception that it causes headaches or hangovers. What do you think?
There's a lot of buzz these days about clean wine, and a lot of companies are trying to market as clean wine. And to a lot of companies, they just mean, well, it's biodynamically farmed and we don't use pesticides. But what you're getting at is the sulfites and the histamines in wine. And wineries add sulfites because it helps the wine keep its color and keep its flavor. It's a preservative. But too much sulfite, and that's going to give you a headache.
Okay. So go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, so a lot of wineries are trying to reduce the amount of sulfite. If they add it, they want to add a minimal amount and keep it at a very low level.
Okay. All right. And I know, did a little research, right? They want to keep it under 10 parts per million?
Yes.
Basically.
Right. By law, I was looking today, I think by law, it can be up to 350 parts per million. That sounds like a bad hangover.
By law. Yeah, it does. But it is. But for the clean wine label, right? So we're talking maybe 10 parts per million.
Yep. Right.
Cool.
It's something like 1 in 100 people have an allergy, a sensitivity to the sulfur dioxide. And
Only
if you
one out of
do,
100. That's
one
that's nothing. I mean, that's
right,
1%.
that's common. And if you do, red wine's going to just be a killer for you.
Well, there's that leaves most of us, right? Who are pretty good. So maybe a way to avoid it is looking for a Napa clean wine sounds good. And listen, Scott and I are walking the walk too, right? So we're drinking 2 Napa wines. So Scott, could you tell us what you're drinking right now and show it on the camera?
Sure. Tonight I've chosen Frog's Leap Zinfandel.
Okay.
Frog's Leap is one of our favorites. We're wine club members, and the Zinfandel is blended with some Petit Syrah, which is not uncommon to have Petit Syrah blended in with Zinfandel, and it just really, really fruity in the glass.
I love fruit forward wine. I went over to Benny's and I got Emblem Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley, vintage 2018.
Hmm.
It is fruit forward and there's a little black currant, broken cacao, and a wisp of Eastern spices from the French oak. So like you said, right, it's 90% cab, it's 5% Petit Verdal and 5% Petit Syrah. So I'm really
Nice.
digging this.
That's a really, really cool blend.
Is that a good blend? You recommend it? So I just kind of
Yeah.
I went in there. I spend a little bit more than I usually do on a bottle of wine. Not a lot, to be honest with you, it was $37.99, and I just unless I'm going to like one of your parties, Scott, I definitely bring a little bit more expensive wine. But for
Please do.
myself, if I'm having a pizza, I will get like a $20 bottle of wine. But tonight, though, in honor of the podcast, I did splurge a little bit, and man, my taste buds are really appreciating it. I've got to do a palate cleanse, which I don't think I need a palate cleanse because I'm not going to drink any other wine. I do have Ritz crackers with Trader Joe's pub cheese infused with horseradish. That's my cleanser.
Trader
on that.
Joe's.
I don't know if I should eat it though when I talk. Maybe that'll sound bad. I'm not sure, but that is really cool. So we're moving on from our wine. As I said, right, Napa is only a few miles wide and 30 miles long. But there are distinctly different wines produced on each end and up and down. I've heard someone kind of expound upon it, this blessed plot, this lungs of Napa, right? Could you expand upon that a little bit? I mean, it's such a small region, right? But there's all sorts of barriers and different temperatures affecting the grape differently. So maybe tell us a little bit more to understand Napa wines.
Yeah, well, I mean, starting at the bottom of Napa Valley, when you drive up from San Francisco and first get there, the lowest vinicultural area, Los Carneros, is down at the southern tip of the valley. It actually straddles Napa and Sonoma.
Oh, it does. Okay.
It does. And it's close to San Pablo Bay, which is sort of the northern tip of the bay. And so they get a little more fog. They experience cooler temperatures at night and a little bit lower high temps during the day. So the cooler climate there is very good for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay grapes, which are the two main grapes in sparkling wine. So many of the sparkling wine producers in Napa and Sonoma, Mumm, Chandon, Carneros, they have many fields there. It's just extensive, and it's pretty much all Pinot Noir and Chardonnay that they're growing down there because that's the perfect climate for it.
Well, everybody likes to talk about red wine, but any favorites of Chardonnay? Any places I guess that one could visit at the southern tip of Napa that you could recommend?
Yeah. Technically it's a little bit further north. I mean, my absolute favorite Chardonnay is Cake Bread. They're a little bit further north.
That's a big name.
It is. Well, everyone talks about the Cake Bread Cabernet. I meet a ton of people that go, "Oh, I love their Cake Bread Cabernet."
Yeah.
I tell you, you got to try their Chardonnay. Um,
Maybe I should get
Chardonnay,
some for my mom. My mom loves Chardonnay. I assume, right? It's not a heavy oak taste that makes it fantastic.
correct. And that's the thing with Chardonnay. We won't go down this rabbit hole, but as somebody once told us, Chardonnay is a very boring grape. And so that's why winemakers do things to it like malolactic fermentation to give it the buttery flavor, or they
Mm,
oak it and they make it
yeah.
oaky. And some people say they don't like Chardonnay, and it's because maybe you drank one that was over oaked or one that was
Yes.
super buttery. And I
Yeah.
think winemakers are trying to do something in the middle. They'll blend some that was buttery with the malolactic fermentation, and some was in oak, and kind of put it together for a more balanced flavor.
My mom is a big Chardonnay wine drinker, so I think I'll take your advice and I'll get her a bottle of cakebread Chardonnay. That
I think
sounds
she'll
really
like it.
good.
I think
Yes, I
so.
think she will too. I think she'll like you even more than she likes you, and she likes you a lot. If we get a bottle of cake bread, so that's fantastic. Okay, so one's in the car and one's in the southern tip of
Yeah,
this patch, right, hemmed in by all of nature, and we're heading north.
right.
What's next? What's in the middle of the
So, well,
lungs?
you head north up into the valley, and
Okay.
you get much higher temperatures. Um, you'll regularly you get into July, August, September.
Hmm.
You're 90s every single day, and you may even hit some 100-degree temperatures, and it's hot, and that kind of
Yeah.
heat is wonderful for Cabernet Sauvignon for sure, which is I mean, that's probably what Napa is most well known for. And so that's north tip of the valley, Calistoga up in that area.
Uh-huh.
You're going to get more Cabernet Sauvignon, and you're going to have a lot of heat. The nights won't be as cold. There won't be as much fog. So that's what they
If
plant up there.
Forgive my ignorance, if the nights aren't as cold, then maybe less condensation on the grapes as well. Dew point.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah,
One never knows, I
definitely.
guess. Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
that okay. So cab. That's okay. That's something to learn, right? So we got the high temperatures of the north, where the cab is, and weren't you telling me that the Pinot Noir? Where's Pinot Noir grown
That's in the
there?
in the south in Carneros.
In Carneros as well, with the
Yeah.
Chardonnay.
Oh,
Okay.
and the other popular place for it is further north of Napa Valley in the Russian River Valley. So the Russian River Valley is a little further north and east of Napa, and
Okay.
you again, that's a good combination of soils and climate, and you get a lot of Pinot Noir out of the Russian River Valley.
And that sits up north, right? That kind of is
Yeah.
on the scalp, so to speak, of
Yes.
Napa Valley, and it's an
Yeah.
ice pack, so to speak, right? It
Yeah,
kind of
by Santa Rosa. So,
okay. All right, so
um,
that hems it in. Okay, so that is really interesting for the Pinot Noir. Okay. And then northern part of the valley, you're telling me, and it rises to about 362 feet above sea level. You're telling me, yeah, you got the Russian River there. It gets hot. You
yep.
got cab. What else you got there besides cab in that area?
Well, I mean, they're going to grow the blending grapes that they're going to blend in too. Petit Verdot.
Hmm.
Um, there'll be some Malbec, some Merlot. Most of these winemakers, even many of them make 100% cab, but they're also going to blend in small amounts of Merlot, Petit Verdot, Malbec, Cabernet Franc. So I mean, they'll grow some rows of that.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And
So
Sauvignon Blanc. Let's
yes.
not
Oh,
forget
Sauvignon
Sauvignon
Blanc. Yeah.
Blanc.
Let's not forget Sauvignon Blanc. Yes. And
I
that,
love
okay.
Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah. So do I do. What is the difference between Sauvignon Blanc and well, the other white wine,
Chardonnay.
Chardonnay.
I mean,
Sorry, I've
so
already had too much wine. So
Sauvignon Blanc is, it can be a little more minerally, like light fruity taste, like melon. Um, I think people consider it a lighter, fruitier uh, white wine, like a summer sipper, like perfect on a hot
okay.
day,
On a hot
because
day. Yes.
Chardonnay can have a little heavier mouth feel, and the Sauvignon Blanc is just really light.
Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, so from south to north, right? You're flying to San Francisco. Rumor has it you were out there a couple of weekends ago in Napa Valley. So if one, leaves the airport, you rent a car, boom, you cross the Golden Gate Bridge and you're driving up and you hit the south. So the south has Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, um, sea level breezes from San Pablo keep the temperatures cooler and more moderate, right? Then as you head up
Yep,
north, right, the temps get a little warmer, right? And that's good for the Cab and Sauvignon Blanc.
for sure. For sure. I've had days when we left our house, which is down in the Carneros region, and it
Mhm.
was cool and foggy. And when we drove north to the top part of the valley by Calistoga, there was zero fog and it was much hotter. I mean, I noticed it within a few minutes.
So I think I'm beginning to figure out why Napa is such a national treasure because it's only 30 miles long, but you have this huge diversion of temperatures and weather. There's microclimates all over the place in that. So that's an amazing. They should almost make it a national park in a way, So in a way.
Yeah. Well, and,
Yes,
and you
yes,
get a diversity of soils too. So
yes. Let's
um,
talk about that.
it's
Scott? What makes them so special? I mean, what?
it's hemmed in by two mountain ranges on the sides, and those are volcanic soil. All the way down the top of the mountains, all the way down through the hills, it's volcanic. And really everything is volcanic at the base. But there are parts of the valley where over the years, sediment has flowed down from the hills.
Yeah,
So on top of the volcanic base, there's an alluvial fan of clay, sand, and gravel that has
Mr.
washed
Fancy
down.
alluvial fan. You described that perfectly. I just think of the soil like fanning out on the bottom and making this soil, right, which gives it earthiness and minerality besides the fruit forward, right? So we can compete head on with the French and maybe even beat them. What was the year that we went to France and kicked their tail, like 75, 76, something like that?
Oh, I don't want to say it was 75. Yeah, 75 or 76. Um yeah, they had the competition in France where they had some of the finest French wine experts blind taste French reds and American reds versus each other, and French whites versus American whites. And in both red and white category, an American wine won, and it it rocked the world. So there was a good movie made about it called Bottle Shock because
Oh, Bottle Shock. I want to see that. I think that's one of my top tens I want to see after
it's good.
visiting Napa a couple of times. That's great.
Yep.
And then I do love the fruit forward though, the wines. The French are pissed off from that, and now they call Napa Valley cabs Hawaiian punch. But I
Yeah.
think they're a little overdoing it on there. So okay, here's a little question for folks that are concerned about the ecology or water consumption. Do you need a lot of water for growing grapes, like the lettuce industry? I mean,
And
are they just going to suck the reservoirs dry?
you don't. And I mean, they're pretty carefully regulated about their water usage out there. So some farms, and I mean, let's be honest, these guys are farmers, right? That's what they are
Right.
first. They have reservoirs that they've built, ponds they've dug out, or reservoirs that they've, built up berms, and they try to collect as much water as they can in the rainy season to do some irrigation. But there are other wineries, actually, my friends at Frog's Leap are one of them, where they practice dry farming.
Tell
They
us a little bit about that.
intentionally don't irrigate because when you don't, the grape plant, those roots, they will find water. They just work harder. They reach down 10, 12 feet, maybe deeper. They reach down into the earth to find
Hmm.
groundwater down there.
Okay.
And the effort of doing that, it makes the plant work really hard. And you end up with very tight the grapes. The grapes are a little bit smaller and
Smaller.
much more
Okay.
dense flavor.
Yes. Powerful but small grapes
Yes.
that are worked, so that's something to think about, right? So when you get a powerful cab, right, they didn't use a lot of water to produce that. They let nature, let the roots do its work. So That's amazing. And you mentioned Frog's Leap Winery. For anybody else thinking about doing a quick weekend in Napa, what are a couple of more of your favorites that maybe they could visit that you could recommend?
Yeah, so I mean, we have guests out periodically, and I usually try to pick a place where you can get a reasonably priced tasting that will give you some reds and whites, because you've always got a mixed audience. You may have somebody who just wants reds,
Mm.
and you may have folks that want whites. So I mean, that's why I pick places like Frog's Leap or Trefethen Family Winery. It's close down in towards Napa, and they have a mix of reds and whites. So they're kind of go-tos that we take guests to a lot, just because it's got a nice mix of wines.
All right, that's really good information. So now everyone knows, like, what to look for when you're starting out from the south to the north, what types of wines there are, and I assume, right? I think we talked about this in pre-show a little bit. That some grapes do require a lot of water, and those are to produce, box wines like Franzia or something like that, right? And speaking of grapes, I don't know when I was going to bring that up, but I guess it comes up now. Let's say you inherit a plot of land in Napa, but it hasn't worked a long time. So I mean, so you get, you get loans, you get capital, you get people investing in your vineyard. When can you even start going to market with some of the produce from some of the grapes going out that could make, decent wines? And how long does that take?
Well, it's going to be a minimum of 3 years till you even get grapes that are of a size that are usable.
2 years. Wow. Okay.
Three.
To get, yeah.
But even then, I mean, your yield isn't going to be that great. I mean, the plants aren't that, you won't have that many branches, shoots, and arms that'll be giving you that many clusters. So yeah, you need, I mean, 3 is at the minimum you'll start getting some product, but you're really going to be like probably 5 or 7 years till you get really big full vines.
That sounds like a lot of people can't get in the game because it's too late to get a return on that. I read somewhere, Scott, where it says 75% of vineyards in Napa are family owned. That sounds really good. It's not this huge corporation, but a family doing that. That sounds like a really nice part of Napa. Almost like it's a farming community.
Right. And a lot of those family owned farms, I don't know. I was gonna say they don't even necessarily bottle wine. They grow. I mean, they sell their farmers, they grow the grapes and they sell them to Prisoner Wine Company or some other large conglomerate. Those people produce, hundreds of thousands of cases of wine. They need grapes, and so they have to buy them. And so a lot of these families, I mean, they grow grapes and they sell them. So a big part of being a winemaker is finding good farmers, good vineyards, and getting the contracts on those grapes.
Well, that sounds good, and I'll tell you what, the producers have put some music on, Scott, and you're going to go ahead and give your favorite, your 2 wines that you selected. So, folks, so listen in, right? Listen in. Scott's going to give you his 2 picks that only he would know, right? So you're not going to get it from a wine magazine, but someone who really knows Napa and is, I definitely consider him a super aficionado. So, Scott, if you could give us your first wine. What's the name, label, and what's some of the characteristics of it?
Well, I mean, I guess I already kind of let the cat out of the frog out of the bag on this one.
Go ahead.
I'm loving. So I guess my rationale was everybody knows Napa's got cabs, right? Great cabs, tons of cabs. So I was trying to pick something that was a little different and off the mark. So that's why I went with the Frog's Leap Zinfandel,
right?
Which is the blend of the Zinfandel and the Petit Syrah, and it's really fruity and it just fills the mouth, and it doesn't necessarily have all the oaky hints that a cab does, but it's a fantastic Zinfandel. And then I did earlier mention. Oh, go ahead.
One thing. What can you? What's a good dish to pair that with for folks?
Oh, Zinfandel is often mentioned with like grilled meats, right? So if you're having ribs or a pork roast or something. I mean,
Uh-huh.
Zinfandel's fantastic.
That sounds really good with pork. Yes, that's good advice. All right, so where can one find Frog's Leap Zinfandel?
The Frog's Leap Zinfandel is available at Binny's for $36.
Oh, that's a good buy. That really sounds good, Okay, so tell us pick number 2.
Pick number 2 is another oddball. I mentioned Trefethen earlier. I am in love with a blend they have called Dragon's Tooth. The Dragon's Tooth is a predominantly Malbec wine. You don't see Malbec's usually used as a blending grape. This is 40% Malbec and 32% Petit Verdot, and then the rest is made up with Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, which are usually the predominant grape. But to feature Malbec and Petit Verdot, I love it. They're very tannic, very heavy, and I mean, you definitely want to go steak with this one.
Oh yeah, making my mouth water. Once again, what's the name of this wine?
It's called Dragon's Tooth. It's their homage to their Welsh heritage. The dragon from the Welsh flag.
Yes.
And it's $39 at Binny's.
At Binny's as well. You can get that at Binny's. Okay, yes, Dragon's Tooth. Is that the name of the vineyard, or is it
no,
just
Trefethen is the wine.
Trefethen, yeah, Trefethen.
Trefethen family.
Spell Trefethen,
Trefethen.
All right, so those are the 2 picks of Mr. Scott Bonthron, and folks, hopefully take his advice, try something new, right? Get out of Jewel Osco, and although I'm tired of bashing Jewel Osco, I'm not sorry about that, folks. So okay, so you brought up Merlot, right? And in the movie Sideways, Paul Giamatti, just rips Merlot, right? He goes, but before that though, he said, he goes, I like to think about all the people who tended and picked the grapes of the wine that I'm drinking. And if it's an old wine, how many of them must have died by now? And that's kind of a morbid way to look at things. But I like how wine continues to evolve. Like if I open up a bottle of wine today, it would taste different than if I open it on any other day, because a bottle of wine is actually alive. And I think Paul's character got onto something, right? And I think at Deerfield Caves, there's someone who knows a lot about that, right? So how can what can you add on that, like decanting and aerating, and how does that change your wine?
Yeah, no, definitely. There are wines that you want to decant, and some that don't necessarily need it. It's the decanting is the exposure to oxygen.
Okay.
It helps it lets it give off some of the chemicals and perhaps odors that have built up. Lets it give that off, freshen up, absorb in some oxygen, and it can improve the flavor. So if you open a wine and then just immediately pour it and taste it, leave that bottle sit out for an hour and then taste it again, it's going to taste different. One of the, I think that I don't know if the rule of thumb is the younger a wine is, the more time it needs to aerate, to decant.
The younger it is, okay, the more recent the vintage, let it breathe a little bit longer. That's kind of a rule of thumb. Probably doesn't apply to everything, but it's a good rule of thumb to have. What about aerate? What about I saw somebody aerate a bottle of wine. They poured it through this device, and I don't know what it did. What goes on with that?
The idea there is using titanium. I've seen a number of devices like this where some people have a pouring device that you pour through that has a titanium mesh, or you can squeeze, suck it in, and the wine, and squeeze through titanium. The thought being that the chemical process, the interaction, it ages the wine rapidly for you right there.
Rapidly. Wow.
Right. So the thought is, open your wine, taste it, and then if you do this titanium aging device and it tastes different, then that means your wine still has some life left to it, some aging. If you have another one of those bottles, you
Yeah.
can leave it laying down in your cellar for several more years because it has growth since
It
it's a
has
living
growth.
thing.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's awesome, dude. So there are so many ways you can even affect the way your wine tastes, by putting air in it or letting it sit out. It is a living, breathing organism. That's something to think about, folks. And let's get back to the movie Sideways. So Paul Giamatti's character Miles said, he goes, "No, if anybody orders Merlot, I'm leaving. I'm not drinking any blanking Merlot." That What did that do to Merlot wine sales after that movie? And it was a while ago.
Right.
What happened?
It did help kill Merlot. I mean, back then Merlot was in America. I think that was the red box wine. If you wanted a box wine that was red, they used Merlot, and it was crappy grapes. So I think Merlot was already in a perilous situation. And then when that movie came out, it became fashionable for everyone to say Merlot is crap, and Merlot sales tanked. I mean, for like a decade.
Somebody orders Merlot, you roll your eyes back.
I know.
It's like, oh my God.
I mean,
yeah.
Merlot can be a great wine. I mean, some of the
Yeah.
French Bordeaux, first growths are predominantly Merlot wines, and fetch $1,000 a bottle. And there are Merlot wines made in Napa that are $120, $130 a bottle.
Very
But I mean,
powerful.
they're
Yeah.
premium grapes, and they're hand picked, hand selected for the best grapes. They're put in oak barrels, and they're left in the oak barrels for 24 months or something. I mean, they're very carefully vinted
Right.
to make a special wine.
Right. That makes
But
sense because I have had some awesome Merlot from Napa that blew my head off. I took a sip of it. And it's like, oh, the flavors just, blew it off. So I would say definitely I agree with you. Merlot has been given a bad name, so. And you brought something up, Scott. You brought up oak caskets, right?
yeah,
And what's the differences between French and American oak in their effect on the wines?
so French oak, the grain is much tighter. It's more tight. That's what I'm looking for. Tight.
Yeah.
So the flavor that it imparts when the wine sits in there is a little more subtle. It imparts very good flavor, but it's more of a subtle flavor as opposed to American oak. Um, it's a looser grain, and so it's a much more powerful flavor that it imparts. It's also French oak's more expensive.
Okay.
It has to be like hand split, whereas American oak you can saw cut, and so I mean there's more labor
Yeah,
involved.
more labor.
So it's more costly to use French oak, but I think it gives a little bit more, we'll call it refined flavor to your wine.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, that makes sense. And we're talking about the south part of Napa. Why are white wines, for the most part, less expensive than red wines? What's going on with that?
I'd say a couple of reasons. One is you do get a better yield, right? So yield
Right.
yield from an acre of vineyard, it depends on many things, right? How close you plant, how you take care of things. You can get anywhere between 2 and 10 tons of grapes from an acre of vineyard, but on average, you get about 6.5 tons of white grapes from an acre and 5.3 tons of red grapes. So you get more white grapes per acre. So you get a better yield on
Much
your white
better yield.
grapes.
So that's why. Yeah. I mean, they're bigger, thicker clusters and red grapes. So, I mean,
Right.
you've got a big yield and more wine, and
you
that's the deal.
You don't put all of it in expensive French oak. A lot of most white wine goes in a stainless steel tank that you just use again and again every year.
Oh, it goes into stainless steel, so it's reusable.
Yeah.
So that
maybe
kind
a
of
little bit of
affects the
oak,
price.
but yeah, I mean that helps keep the cost down too. So I mean, you'll still find expensive white wines out there, but on average, yeah, they're going to be much more affordable than your reds.
Okay. And I was driving around there a couple of weeks ago, and I noticed, and for folks that go there, right, you're going to drive up from San Francisco, and you're going to drive through the fields, you're going to see the vineyards, and you're going to see these windmill looking things. I'm not sure what they do. I mean, do they help power pump water, or what are these windmillish things? What do they do?
So those fans are there to um, help save the vineyard when there's a risk of frost. So bud break starts to happen in April, depending on the weather and the climate. Somewhere in where you are in the valley, mid to late April into May, the buds start to bud break, open on the vines. But you can still have some cool evenings where they approach 31, 32 degrees, a frost level. And so
Okay. Yeah.
they crank these fans up, and it keeps the air moving, and it actually prevents the frost. I mean, I haven't been out there when they've been on, but they say it sounds like a squadron of airplanes. There's just all these fans blowing all over the place. It's deafeningly loud. But I mean, you talked about, this is a super important, super valuable crop, and no expenses spared to save it.
Yeah, that land is so valuable. Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so the producers have told me we're going to end it. So, Scott, man, we learned so much today about Napa wines, what the difference is, the soils, the water, the no water, longer roots, makes powerful small grapes, fruit forward. Amazing. Just to let everybody know, Scott's house was built before 1970, so that means they had Soviet paranoia. He had a bomb shelter built in his house, and of course, Scott, the wine expert, actually converted it into a storage for the wine. And so pretty amazing, Scott. Can you tell us once more about your two picks, so in case people missed it, they can write it down again?
Okay, my first pick was Frog's Leap Zinfandel. Beautiful blend of Zinfandel and Petit Syrah. And my second pick was the Trefethen Family Winery Dragon's Tooth, which is a very unique blend of Malbec, Petit Verdot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot. The blend is fantastic.
That sounds really good. I just cleansed my palate. I just had the Ritz cracker with the pub cheese, Trader Joe's pub cheese infused with horseradish. I mean, you just made me so hungry when you're talking about the wine, what it pairs with. So this is great.
Ribs, steak.
That sounds good. Anything else, Scott? Anything else cooking on the wine front? Any projects or wineries that you're looking about hitting in the near future?
There's always more. I mean, it depends on what website you Google. There's got to be 400, 500 wineries out there, and I got to hit them all. And I've got a long ways to go. So on my next visit, I'm going to go hit 4 or 5 new ones and do tastings and listen to what the tasters say and try to learn more.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Everybody, once again, that was Scott Von Thron. Not quite he's not called a sommelier because he doesn't make a living from it, but he is as knowledgeable and expert of wine as just about anybody. So, Scott, thanks so much for your time. We all appreciate it, and let's do it again. There's a lot more to talk about, right?
Absolutely. Anytime, Bill. Happy to do it.
Sounds great. Thank you. This has been You've All Hit Rock Bottom. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.